Everyone in Pittsburgh knows that we made steel for decades, and that legacy is still a living part of who we are now. But there aren't a lot of examples left of how all that history was forged. With the Cary blast furnaces, you can literally stand in the shadow of what was once cutting-edge technology. Rivers of Steel offers tours of this important national historic landmark, and they explain how we made iron, introduce you to the people, the workers who made it possible, and share more about the culture that sprang up to support them. Plus, they've got a special spotlight right now on how the Great Migration shaped its workforce. Learn more and book a tour at riversofsteel.com/tours. Hey, Pittsburgh. I don't know about you, but my perfect summer night includes a little art, a little music, and maybe browsing some cute vintage goodies. So I will be checking out the gallery crawl in the Cultural District. It's on Saturday, July 26th from 5:30 to 9 p.m., and it's all totally free. You can swing by new exhibitions at a couple art galleries and shop for gently used clothes and decor at a midsummer market in the backyard at 8th and Penn. There'll be food, there'll be drinks, there'll be live DJs, and if you're up for it, there's even an after party at Wood Street Galleries where Detour will be dropping a new LP. You can find out more about the crawl and snag a ticket to the after party at trustarts.org/crawl. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. The state just passed a $47.6 billion budget. It is our biggest, but it is definitely not the latest, although it is nearly 2 weeks late. But it does set some new priorities for the Commonwealth. Today, I'm pairing up with CityCast Philly's Trinae Neri to talk about where Pennsylvania is putting its money and what got left on the cutting room floor. It's Tuesday, July 16th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
Hey, y'all, we have a budget. Yay!
Whoop, whoop.
They finished 2 weeks after the June 30th deadline. Still late, but hey, way better than recent years.
Yeah, this cycle, we are seeing increases in public education, a new crack at economic development, a one-time boost for transit, although I would argue Philly is the bigger winner there.
Yeah.
And it creates a new college scholarship program, but there's stuff it does not include.
Right. And we're going to break all of this down. We've got Stephen Caruso, Capitol reporter at Spotlight PA. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Happy to be here and talk about our state government, as always.
Well, let's start with education. Lawmakers agreed on $1 billion more for K-12 education, mostly targeted at school districts in lower income areas. So, for example, Pittsburgh Public Schools got an increase of $2.4 million for a grand total of $180+ million. This is just basic education, not special education. There's so many numbers in play here.
Yeah. Speaking of education in the Philly area, it'll be roughly $232 million. And just a reminder, this is all taking place because a state appellate court found that the way we pay for public schools in the Commonwealth is unconstitutional. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That came out last year. We talked about this on the show, on both of our shows, actually. And we have a link to that episode in our show notes.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, right? What a reputation Pennsylvania has. And both political parties, school advocates, officials, parents, even some students have been making a lot of noise about our inequitable funding system for years and years.
So, Stephen, how are people feeling, this week, seeing that $1 billion number?
Well, I think it's both a very large amount. Obviously, $1 billion is a lot to you and me, but also it's kind of small in the context of what's come before it, the proverbial coconut tree of education. So, I think what's really matters here is that the court said what it said, but advocates have been saying that the answer that we need about $5 to $6 billion over the course of 6-7 years as consistent investment. And I should also note too, that's $1 billion, but that's kind of spread among a bunch of different buckets. This budget plan only puts about $500 million directly to poorer school districts. There's then about $200 million is just a general inflationary increase in public education for all school districts. And then the rest of the money is for stuff like school safety, mental health, school construction, solar panels for schools. And those are all important things. I don't think anyone disputes that those are important things, but the number, that $6 billion number that school advocates were calling for was just meant to be extra dollars flowing directly to poor school districts to make up this thing called adequacy, which is basically the gap between the amount that they should be spending per student and the amount they actually are spending per student. So for them, it's actually a bit of a disappointment.
The difference between education and public transit, they're going to have further negotiations expected this fall for SEPTA, though, right?
That has been the statements. Josh Shapiro said that very emphatically. He has kept his cards close to the vest on what he wants to happen next, but he did say he's willing to come back to that debate. I think Senate Republicans said the same thing, and House Democrats have been clear the whole time that we're also always willing to talk about that. So there's a possibility of that. Likelihood, despite all the best efforts of the MLB, I'm not a betting man. There could be a big deal. There could also be nothing. And either of those options wouldn't surprise me. But either way, more talks. It's always just more talks, more waiting, more sitting on eggshells to see what will actually happen.
SEPTA, of course, the public transit system over there in Philly. Here in Pittsburgh Regional Transit, I think I saw got about $12 million of that teeny tiny pie. When we talked to the CEO, Catherine Kellerman, a few months ago, at the time, the proposal was $40 million for us here in Pittsburgh. And she said even that was like sort of a drop in the bucket. Like it really wasn't going to make a big difference for them. And of course, now we got 12, so much less.
Yeah, I think when it was an $80 million spend for public transit, that isn't a whole lot of money. Everyone's been saying that. I talked to SEPTA gave me a statement that's noted that, this puts them in a holding pattern. The threatened fare hike or service reductions, those are still kind of on the table as they wait to see what happens. And I should also I really want to emphasize, public transit isn't just a big city thing. Smaller cities have bus systems and rural counties have public transit that's the form of a small little bus popping up to take you to a medical appointment or even a van. Public transit is something that happens in every county in the state. It's a statewide issue, and how to address it is going to be probably also having to address highway funding. That's what Senate Republicans who control the upper chamber have said is kind of their asking price, is we're not really going to do transit without highways. And that kind of sets up the debate we could see in fall is going to be, what is the right ratio of money for bridges and roads that'll get rural Republicans to also vote for, subways and buses?
Governor Josh Shapiro's budget proposal included $161 million for SEPTA, but they're only going to get a third of that, $53 million. Stephen, why is it so much lower in terms of the money that they got?
I mean, it's so much lower because what the governor proposed was wholesale providing more money to transit every single year through the way we fund it, which is a transfer of sales tax revenue, annual sales tax revenue. A chunk of it goes to transit. He was going to increase that percentage. Republicans weren't willing to buy that without going to road and bridge funding as well. So I don't know, but I think there are cards on the table that could set up a productive conversation if everyone is able to have it. But just only time will tell.
Stephen, is more money coming?
Well, and that's the $500 million question. The idea is that they should be putting more money in next year, but we have a year-by-year budget process to the frustration of fiscal advocates and anyone who thinks that financial planning should be sound. Mm-hmm. That's kind of also the main thing education advocates say is that they wanted to lock in 7 years of spending, putting, $5-6 billion directly to schools for formula. Instead, it's going to once again be part of this chaotic year-by-year spending debate that's really hard to track. I say as a reporter, spent about 2.5 weeks doing it. And you never know where the chips are going to fall. For instance, on another really big priority, transit funding, that wasn't in the final deal, people inside say, until the last couple of days. And then transit only got $80 million. And that's obviously something that people across the Commonwealth, though, particularly Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, really depend on every day. I mean, I depend on it every day. So as long as you have these yearly rotating budget negotiations, you never know what will come up until the deal is signed and everybody's voted.
Before we, I guess, move off of this, Republicans were talking about ways to try to fund this. One of the things that they had on the table was those slot-like skill games that they have in like corner stores and taverns all over Pennsylvania now. Why didn't taxing those shake out?
Yeah, see, everything's about betting. It's getting tiring.
That's life in Pennsylvania right now.
So I think when it comes to skill games, that's a very complicated issue. I'm sure it seems pretty simple in some ways, but betting is a big money industry. They all pay powerful lobbyists. They spend a lot of money on politics. Mm-hmm. So that just means if you want to regulate it, it's complicated and hard. You have to navigate a lot of fighting interests. And skill games are themselves, which exist in this legal gray area, casinos want them taxed at the same rate as casinos. That's actually about 50% of the revenue of a slot machine actually goes back to the state in terms of taxes. And, skill games are saying absolutely not. We are different from you. Casinos are these giant gambling centers that are meant to only bring in revenue. And, you're talking about charging 50% tax on, one or two of these machines at a corner store. But, also for Philadelphia in particular, city council passed an ordinance to try and cut down on these machines, citing concerns about crime because you just had corner stores being turned into many casinos. So there's this aspect of local control that gets in. It's just a really messy issue with a lot of interests that don't fit neatly along party lines. So they just weren't able to get anything done. And, and that meant the funding that would come from taxing these things wasn't available.
I mean, we pay our taxpayers pay our lawmakers to figure out the hard questions. So I don't know. That's not enough for me personally.
I understand the feeling, but alas, this is government.
Well, some good news if you have had your eye on economic development initiatives here in Pennsylvania. One of Shapiro's big priorities was this way to give grants and loans to developers or local governments who want to help companies set up shop in Pennsylvania. I think they see it as a way to recruit companies to PA. And the governor got what he wanted, $500 million to develop land and help companies get here.
Right. But it sounds like there's a lot of logistical stuff to figure out to be able to start giving this money out. So who actually is going to qualify and what are the steps to get involved?
Oh, yeah. And what's the timeline?
Well, the program you're referring to, that's PA sites. It was a top priority for Josh Shapiro, who very, dare I say, famously in his budget address said, "I'm sick and tired of losing the frickin' Ohio." So the idea of this is basically developers, local governments. There are a lot of these like regional economic development agencies that just sort of serve as clearinghouses to connect big corporations with land, for instance. They could apply and get millions of dollars to try and take sites. Just imagine a big vacant spot of land. Maybe there used to be a factory there, a mine there, or just, it's empty. It's a landfill, whatever it is, and make it ready to take on a big business or mixed use development. Mm-hmm. That can mean building new roads, sewer pipes, Wi-Fi, electricity, rail lines, roads, whatever. That money is going to be doled out over the next couple of years, and it's going to go to, applicants who apply. I think that a really noteworthy for me as Capitol reporter is they actually divide up the money a tiny bit, where Shapiro is going to control most of the dollars, but about $100 million of dollars were set aside to be controlled by a little noted state agency that has requires legislative input. So this is a way for the legislators to feel like they're not just handing Josh Shapiro a blank check. They get a blank check of themselves to hand out as they wish.
It's sort of funny that they gave them a fifth of it just to feel included.
That is governing, particularly this budget. Divided legislature is hard to work with. So, but I think the general idea of this is just, the hope is for Josh Shapiro in particular, who passed an economic development plan, is how do I get more businesses into the state? And the goal is just if you have these sites that are ready, people will want to move their new plastic plant or, whatever your widget factory is du jour into Pennsylvania and bring the jobs here, whether it's the construction jobs or the permanent jobs.
I was just going to ask you a question about infrastructure. I mean, didn't the state get some federal funding to help with infrastructure projects like a workforce development program?
There's tons of federal infrastructure dollars floating around right now because of Biden's infrastructure plan and the Inflation Reduction Act. And that we are seeing that influence state government. My colleague Kate Huangpu has been covering this on the energy front. For instance, there's actually a lot of movement on some energy policy in Pennsylvania because of basically lawmakers don't want to lose out. For instance, a bill is on its way, or is on Governor Josh Shapiro's desk to allow for carbon capture because of this. The thought is this will help us store federal dollars that were set aside for that, like tax credits, and so I think that's helping to kind of push the budget debate the way it went to, with this focus on energy, this focus on economic development, and how to sort of, make sure that we're not losing out.
So, Stephen, what else caught your eye? I mean, you just said energy. I want to talk about EVs. That's something that Philly's developing.
The news for electric vehicle owners isn't great. Under a bill that is on its way to Shapiro's desk, they're going to get rid of a cumbersome alternative fuels tax that was put on EV owners, and they're going to start paying $200 a year at a flat fee that's going to slowly go up over the years with inflation. And I think, that led to a lot of concerns among some environmentalists, but the argument was that EV vehicles, aren't paying their fair share, and gas tax revenues are declining over the years.
And gas taxes are part of what help pay for things like highway and bridge maintenance. So that's sort of why they're stressing the lack of money.
Yes, thank you for connecting that. Because that is the thing. Like, that's kind of our entire infrastructure program is predicated on the idea that gas taxes pay for roads, and if your vehicle doesn't need gasoline, well, that kind of poses the public policy problem.
Important to note, though, hybrid vehicles are not part of this. So if you have a hybrid, you're paying less for gas, and you don't have to pay the EV tax, at least for now.
Now you tell me. I just bought a new car.
I'm feeling very smart because 2 years ago I bought a hybrid, and for now I am safe. But Stephen, I think you're about to tell me maybe not forever.
It's you will pay, plug-in hybrids will pay a somewhat lighter fee. They will still pay a fee. It will just be less than the full EV fee. Sorry.
Got it.
No. There's no free lunch in government. Come on. That's like, poli-sci 101. And Trinae, to your point, there are a lot of small changes in there that I don't want to poo-poo. There are now going to be free period products in schools. There's $3 million in grants for school districts to get that. This budget is actually hard to pull a through line out of.
How about that new scholarship program for nursing and education programs?
Yeah, there are new scholarships. This is actually based on a proposal that Tom Wolf threw out there in 2019 that went nowhere with the Republican General Assembly. But fast forward 5 years, and now the General Assembly is going to be giving extra dollars, I think about $5,000 max around there, to any student who goes into a degree program that's basically could be anything from nursing to criminal justice engineering, but a list of high demand occupations, and they say in Pennsylvania. So, there's some meaningful investments in a lot of important things, but they're all kind of small scale investments. And, I don't know if this is a budget that everyone has said is a product of divided government.
Megan, I think you have another one on the list that you've got to ask. And I think we're all kind of on the edge of our seat about this one. Stephen, I think you know what it is, too.
Yeah, let's pour one out for at least one big thing that did not get past this cycle. Still no recreational cannabis. Stephen, why? When can we have the thing that every other state around us, except West Virginia, actually already has?
Oh, man. This is a whole episode. I'm going to see if I can do it in 2 minutes.
You can do it. I believe in you.
Okay, we don't have recreational cannabis because this is a complicated topic to start banal. The main thing is that if you want to pass it, you're going to need a win over a lot of votes among House Democrats. And a very big portion of House Democrats are the Legislative Black Caucus. They actually had a press conference where they announced they had finally kind of, they were putting out their position on this. And they were focusing on equity. How do we ensure that, people who have been hurt by cannabis criminalization are actually going to see some fruits from this becoming legal, and it not just be taken over by national companies that are all over the supply chain and control everything. So, they threw out some ideas that I've never seen before, such as not just getting rid of people's criminal records, but restitution for civil asset forfeiture from marijuana arrests. And those are big ideas. But, I think I'm highlighting this because it's just, there's a lot of complicated politics to get a legalization bill through a divided General Assembly. That's why education funding was the way it is. So it starts with the House Democrats being able to pass a bill. And I think a big portion of that to look at is how do you build equity provisions that the people most impacted by criminalization are happy with.
Well, and I mean, other states have figured out at least pieces of this. Maryland, quite infamously this summer decided to address some of those previous prosecutions. Is it that Pennsylvania's trying to figure out how to do it all at once and they just don't want to do it piecemeal? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, there's definitely that would be the other main thing, is that nobody wants to do it piecemeal. Basically, the argument is if you start doing it piecemeal, you might lose some momentum, and that won't that will make it harder to pass a bill. Lawmakers are a lot like a student working on a term paper. They kind of need a deadline, and they just bang out the whole thing in a weekend. And I think that there's nothing like that with marijuana. There's just the lingering feeling that maybe they're falling behind, but nobody wants to get this wrong.
I have a quick question about some other things we didn't see, like the minimum wage changing.
Yeah, my understanding from talking to Capitol sources, there was a minimum wage hike that was kind of put on the table in exchange for some business tax reductions. That didn't end up going anywhere. It's just kind of become a partisan cudgel, and it hasn't gone anywhere. So I go back to the point I've made repeatedly. Divided government is hard. I guess I should trademark that.
And last on at least our list today, we reserve the right to bother you in future. Private school vouchers, which Shapiro has supported, Republicans wanted, and even Jay-Z got involved in.
Yes, he
sort of
did.
Notoriously a few weeks ago.
The Senate Republicans have made it very clear they want that issue badly. I'm sure it will continue to be a white whale, but I think it's just another one of those issues that'll cause kick up a lot of dust, but I don't think it has a lot of legs in the building.
Stephen, thank you so much for all of this. Stephen Caruso is a reporter for Spotlight PA. He has approximately 1 million stories about the budget up right now, but we will link a few of our favorites in the show notes. Stephen, really appreciate it as always.
Thanks for having me.
And Trinae, always a blast. Have a great day in Philly.
Thanks, Megan.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're liking the show, please tell someone, rate us, leave us a nice review, and make sure you're subscribed to that Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.
Democrats and Republicans, hot take, don't agree on a lot of things in the year of our Lord 2024. So trying to get everybody to come to a consensus point was hard. I mean, I think that's partially why we saw the budget debate bleed into July. I think so. It's very easy to, I think, hear us talk about this and realize, education getting as much money as advocates wanted, transit still sitting there, what is going to happen to us in 6 months? But divided government is hard work. There's really no other way to put it.